Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive with me?
Always ready to jump into a new case.
Excellent. And boy, do we have a case for you today. We're going all the way back to 1973.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To a small town that was shaken by a truly baffling murder. A young woman named Barbara Ann Williams.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's one of those cases they just stuck with people. And over the years, there have been a lot of theories.
Oh, I bet.
A lot of speculation. But no real answers.
Unsolved.
That's right. But thankfully, I've got some really incredible sources to share with you all today. Articles, court documents, even some local news clippings from back in '73.
That's amazing.
Well, I want to try and understand what happened to Barbara Ann. And I think the best place to start is with her. Who was she? Not just the victim, but the person, you know.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So what can we piece together about her life?
Well, it's clear she was a beloved member of her community. She was active in her church, sang in the choir. I even came across a story about her baking pies for a local fundraiser.
Sounds like someone who really made a difference.
Oh, absolutely. People remember her infectious laugh, her kindness. I mean, her friends said you could hear her laugh from across the street.
Wow. Yeah, you really get the sense that her absence left a void in the community.
Absolutely. It's also clear that her murder was deeply felt by the entire town. I mean, businesses closed the day of her funeral.
That's incredible. A whole town shutting down to mourn her loss.
It's really a testament to the kind of impact she had on people.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit. Talk about the night of the murder.
Okay.
We have to piece together a timeline here. What do we know about her last known movements?
Well, she was last seen leaving her workplace, a local diner. It was around 10 p.m.
Okay. Anyone see it with anyone? Was she alone?
That's part of the mystery. The sources I have. The conflicting. Some people say she left alone. Some say she was talking to a man in a green car outside.
A green car? That's interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely a lead the police looked into.
So we've got a bit of a gap in the timeline here. Then comes the discovery of her body.
Right. A couple days later.
Where was she found?
In a wooded area outside of town.
Tragic.
A group of teenagers found her. That must have been awful.
Terrible. Was there anything at the scene? Any signs of a struggle?
Well, one of the sources, a report from the original investigation, it emphasizes that there were no obvious signs of a struggle, which is strange.
No signs of a struggle.
Right.
All right. So what about the cause of death?
Okay, so this is one of the most baffling aspects of the case. The autopsy report. It was inconclusive.
They couldn't figure out how she died.
No, not definitively. It happens sometimes, but it makes things a lot harder to figure out.
Especially back then.
Exactly. We're talking 1973. Forensics was a different world.
No DNA testing.
Nope. That wasn't widely available until much later.
So what were the police working with?
Primarily eyewitness accounts. And those, well...
They can be notoriously unreliable.
Exactly. They also had fingerprints, but the technology was limited back then. And the crime scene, well, it wasn't well preserved.
I see. So a lot of challenges for those investigators.
Definitely.
But they must have had some leads, some suspects.
Well, initially they zeroed in on a local guy, had a bit of a rough past, some run-ins with the law.
Did he know Barbara Ann?
It seems they had crossed paths a few times, but the evidence against him was circumstantial, and he had a pretty solid alibi.
So a dead end.
Basically.
So what about the community? How did they react to all of this?
It's clear from the newspaper clippings you provided that the town was terrified. There was a lot of fear, understandably.
Yeah, you've got a killer on the loose.
Exactly. And this wasn't a big city. This was a small town where everyone knew each other. So this really hit them hard.
So how did the case go cold? What happened?
I think it was a combination of factors. The lack of hard evidence, the dead-end leads, the reliance on eyewitness accounts that didn't quite add up. Eventually, the investigation just stalled.
Makes sense.
But it wasn't forgotten.
Right.
In recent years, there's been some renewed interest in Barbara Ann's case.
What sparked that?
Well, advancements in DNA technology. What was impossible back in '73 is now possible.
So are they retesting evidence?
They are. They're looking for any trace of DNA that could identify the killer.
Fingers crossed.
I know. It would be incredible if they could finally get some answers.
Yeah. What about Barbara Ann's family? How have they been coping all these years?
You included an interview with her younger sister, and it's just heartbreaking. She talks about the pain of not knowing who took her sister, the feeling that justice has been denied.
It's a reminder that behind every cold case, there are real people who are still hurting.
Exactly. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if things had been different? What if they had the technology we have now back then? Could this have been solved? Could her family have had some closure?
It's hard not to think about that.
It is, and that's why these cold cases are so fascinating. They're not just about the past. They're about how we understand the present and how we can use what we know now to seek justice for those who have been denied it.
Absolutely. It's a story of a life cut tragically short, a community forever scarred, and the ongoing pursuit of justice, no matter how much time has passed.
It's also a reminder that even in the smallest towns, secrets can linger for decades.
Absolutely. Well, that's our deep dive into the case of Barbara Ann Williams, a case that's still open, still unresolved, and a reminder that sometimes the past refuses to stay buried. Thanks for joining me on this journey,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.